The role of social media in TV discovery, SVOD pricing optimization, and churn reduction are three key takeaways from Deloitte's new digital media report. Listen on for more.
Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Stream. This is Will Richmond from Video News, and that was Colin Dixon there at the beginning, as always. Hey, Colin, how are you doing?
Doing good, Will. I watched the new movie Electric State on Netflix last weekend, and I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was great fun. Enjoyed Chris Pratt, enjoyed Billy Joe, whatever her name is, who's the actress. I don't know why all the critics hated it so much, but that's often the case with the stuff that I watch. I thought it was a good movie.
Yeah, cool. I actually watched the 4-part series on Netflix with Robert De Niro, 0 Day, which I thought was quite good. Yeah.
So Netflix is still giving value to us. That's good to hear. But we're not talking about Netflix today. We've got other fish to fry. I know our audience might be a bit disappointed that Jonathan Carson isn't joining us today, but he will be with us next week. We are going to be talking to him about their new data that they've just put out. So they can look forward to that.
Great. And before we get started, we just want to say a thanks to our sponsor this week, Looper Insights. Sports streaming is booming, and that's where Looper Insights comes in, helping platforms and studios track and improve their visibility across 250 plus CTV devices, ensuring their content reaches the right audience at the right time, including sports.
Yeah, and to sort of back that up, they've got a new report called The Sports Streaming Craze, Sustainable Growth or Overhyped Trend for 2025. And that's I think there are lots of interesting insights. I've had a read through it and I enjoyed it a lot. So make sure you stop by the Looper Insights website and pick up a copy of that report.
Yep, sounds good.
And now we've got some news items for our audience today, right?
We do, and I think you are starting us off.
Oh, I am? Oh, okay, I will. There was quite an interesting announcement by NBCU and LG this week. And boy, there's like they're launching. NBCU is planning on launching, I think they said like 40 channels on LG channels. And they've already launched 4. They said they've launched NBC News Now, Today All Day, Dateline 24/7 and SNL Vault have already been launched on LG channels, and I'll get back to that in just a second. But there's going to be a ton of stuff here, Will. They're taking some of their single IP shows, they're creating some single IP channels like The Real Housewives, Top Chef, Below Decks, etc. They're also putting a whole bunch of their O&O local TV channels, including NBC New York News, NBC Los Angeles News, and a whole bunch of others are going to be there. Alfred Hitchcock Presents, American Ninja Warrior. So there's a ton of stuff that's going to be joining LG channels. And they're also going to be working with LG to introduce some shopping features. So there'll be shoppable ads, and they'll be using NBCU's checkout and LG's WebOS pay feature to actually make those click to pay. So if you see something you like, you'll be able to just click with your remote and you'll be able to pay. So that's all exciting stuff coming to LG channels. I'm always interested with this type of announcement, Will, because it is very difficult for us, the consumer, to figure out what is where. So I thought I'd take a quick check about the 4 channels that they said are actually just been launched on LG channels. So that was NBC News Now, Today All Day, Dateline 24/7, and SNL Vault. And I looked at a bunch of different services, and your best bet if you want to watch those channels, your best bet is Plex. Plex has all 4 of those channels already launched. So you'll be able to load Plex on whatever you're running as your connected TV platform. If you've got the Roku, you can find them all on the Roku channel, and you can also find them all on Samsung TV Plus. Others, it's really hit or miss. Pluto's got 3. SNL Vault is missing on a lot of them. So I guess the bottom line here is it's actually kind of difficult for us, the viewer, to figure out if we've got these channels or not. And I think that's going to be a continuing problem for content providers like NBC. People just figuring out where they can actually watch the channels that they're launching all over the place. But if you're an LG channels user, I think you'll probably appreciate having those channels readily available to you.
I think that's right. And, you certainly put your finger on the discovery issue, especially in the FAST environment that we've talked about a number of times in the past.
Yeah. And if anybody's interested, I'll put my findings. I checked out 8 fast platforms, some of them built in, some of them not. And I'll put my findings in my posting of this website. So just come to the Endscreen Media website under the analysis tab. So what did you see, Will?
Thanks for doing that, Colin. That's handy. Yeah, and so caught my attention this week was the new Nielsen Gauge report out this week. And not a surprise that YouTube continued to be the top platform by monthly viewing, TV viewing by distributor. But they actually picked up some steam. They were up to 11.6% in February of 25. That was up from 9.3% in February of 24 and 9% in November of 23. So YouTube over the past 15 months or so has picked up 2.5 points, more than 2.5 points of market share. Just contrast that with Disney as an example, which was at 11.5% back in November of 23, according to Nielsen, then dropped to 10.4% in February of 24, and then now down to 10% in February of 25. So YouTube continues to really go up in the right direction, and the report has the data on all the other providers. But after Disney, they're in second place. Fox comes in third at 8 point. Actually, there's basically 4 providers that are all 8.1% to 8.3%: Fox, Netflix, Paramount, and NBCU. Then it drops down to 6% or less. So the gauge is always, I think we've always found the gauge to be valuable in terms of what the share of TV usage is across a number of different services. One thing the gauge that Nielsen did call out this time was that for people over age 50, they accounted for 36% of time spent watching YouTube on TV screens, which was actually more than the 28% that's the combined number for both teenagers and 18 to 34s. So YouTube seems to be picking up some ground among more mature audiences as well.
Indeed. And the thing that's really significant about this for me, Will, is the fact that what Nielsen is doing here is they're summing up all Disney properties that come to the television. So that includes Disney broadcast channels, that includes cable, and it includes those streaming services. So when they give that number, they're saying that YouTube beat all of Disney's TV-pointed properties. And I think that's the really significant thing here, that basically YouTube is beating all of this professionally produced content that Disney is providing in the TV sphere with creator content. And I think, any of our listeners, I think, are probably not surprised by this data at all, because you and I have talked about it several times on the podcast before, Will. But it's still pretty amazing when you think about it. This gets to the heart of how disruptive the YouTube model is to traditional TV. It's a bear to compete with, and I just don't know how TV providers like Disney are going to really push back on YouTube's progress. It just keeps growing and growing, and we're going to look at some data in a little bit here which helps explain why that is, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we can expect the gauge to continue to report ever higher numbers for YouTube as we go forward. But let's move on, Colin, to our next item, which our main item today, which you are going to start us off on. Deloitte has a new report out this week, and it has a lot of information in it, but we've pulled out some of the key data points that we thought were particularly interesting, and you've got the first two.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to zip through quite a lot of the data because they make I thought a very interesting point. This is actually the 2025 Digital Media Trends report that they regularly do, and both Will and I will include a link to this in our postings so you can easily find it. One of the things that they do in the report is they really take a pretty close look at Gen Z viewing. So Gen Z, just to remind you, is people born between 1997 and 2010. So they're the youngest group that they're tracking in this survey. And they spend quite a lot of time looking at this group and tracking what their viewing is. And they made a very interesting comment, which I want to quote, and they sort of lay out data to justify this. So what they say in the report, in the conclusion to the report, they say that social platforms are the nexus of discovery, awareness, and hype for film and TV. 56% of younger generations surveyed watch TV shows or movies on SVOD after hearing about them from creators online, and 53% say they get better recommendations on what to watch from social media. Marketing efforts should start and end on leading social platforms. So they sort of build their case here from the data, Will. And the first thing is that they sort of account for all the time that Gen Z spends viewing, and that time that they look at the time, basically all the time that Gen Z spends with media. And what they found was basically that about 35% of the 6.9 hours that Gen Z spend with media every day, about 35% is social content. That's comprised of UGC, watching user-generated content, presumably from TikTok and YouTube, etc., and just flat out on social media. So that's about 35% of the time. And they spend about 30% of their time with watching TV content, either streamed or live. So that's kind of the first point they make, that Gen Z are spending a lot of time on social platforms and watching consuming social media. The second point they make is that when Gen Z and millennials are there on those social platforms, they find that social content more personally relevant and engaging. They basically asked, do you agree with this statement? I feel a stronger personal connection to social media creators than to TV personalities or actors. And 52% of Gen Z said that versus 32% for the average. And the second statement is that social media content is more relevant to me than traditional content like TV shows and movies. And 56% of Gen Z agree with that statement versus 31% for the average. So the clear point here is that the content that people find there is more relevant. And the final piece to sort of justify this statement about if you're a media and entertainment provider, you should be advertising first and mainly on social to Gen Z, is they say that ads are more influential, and they have a very complicated diagram. But the gist of the diagram is that the percentage of consumers who say they find ads and product reviews on social media sites in Gen Z is very, very high. 63% say it's most influential to their purchasing decision versus 36% for the average. And they say that only 28% say that they find streaming video services most influential to their purchasing decisions. Among Gen Zs, that is. Of course, those numbers are vastly different if the older you get. It tends to obviously lean more towards streaming video services, I would guess, in that circumstance. So they sort of put all of this data together, Will, to justify their statement that if you're media and entertainment, your advertising, your marketing should begin and end on social media. And this struck me as a little bit odd. And the reason I say that is, by their own data, the Gen Zs are spending 30% of their media time watching TV entertainment, either through streaming or through traditional TV methods, right? And it turns out that the most effective method of advertising content to people, getting content under people's noses, is through commercials or ads. So I was looking at TiVo data from Q2 2024, and they basically say that the top methods of discovering new content are word of mouth from friends, 50%, and the one that you can control if you are marketing is commercials or ads that run during other shows, which is 41%. Say that that's a top method of discovering new content for them. And this is for US and Canadian viewers. So I think that relying wholly on social media to reach Gen Z is a mistake. I think that they're clearly watching a lot of content on TV. They clearly are still, even though they find the social media, they think, more engaging to them, they are still watching a lot of traditional television. And I don't know about you, but watching an ad that shows me the content, I think has got to be a lot more powerful in getting me to watch it than hearing a creator recommend it. Just talking about it, right? So if I were you and if I was advertising to Gen Z, I would have a fully formed marketing plan that uses all of the channels that they use, and I wouldn't rely entirely on social media, as Deloitte seemed to be implying.
I mean, I think you make a good point that there are so many different ways to reach audiences now that relying just on one channel solely seems limited. Having said that, neither you nor I are Gen Zs, so we won't be sensitive to the fact that different groups, different age groups respond differently to different channels. And, just the point that you made, it may well be that for lots of Gen Zs, hearing their favorite creator or influencer talk about a specific program and why they loved it, why they should watch it, etc., why their fans should watch it, may indeed be more powerful than any type of trailer or anything else that the studio might put up. So, I guess I would just say it's, different strokes for different folks, I guess maybe is the summary of my reaction.
Yeah, maybe you're right, but I don't know. I just think if I'm advertising to those guys, I want to get the trailer under their nose. That's going to be the most powerful way of getting people to watch. I mean, goodness me. I mean, I'm not Gen Z, but I do watch a heck of a lot of YouTube on TV. You know what got me to watch Electric State? It was the trailer on Netflix. I looked at it, I went, oh, I'm going to watch that. I've added it to my watch list and I watched it on the weekend. So, that's such a simple, straight line to watching the content, right? You just mark it, going to watch that and watch it. So anyway, I'll pause. I've got some other points, but what did you see that caught your eye in this data?
Yeah, I'll just go over a couple of items. And actually some of this is what we're going to hear from Jonathan Carson at Antenna about next week. But I thought there was some really interesting data in here about viewers' sensitivities to price increases. So I'll just list off a few of the data points. Respondents said a $5 increase. 60% have said that a $5 increase, even to their favorite SVOD service, would likely cause them to cancel. And in fact, 39% of subscribers canceled at least one SVOD service in the past 6 months. That number is about stable relative to the last few surveys that Deloitte has done. And Deloitte pointed out, as we know, is an effective strategy that bundling is a way to reduce churn. Yet another way is that Deloitte points out is by introducing lower cost ad-supported tiers of service. And they found 54% of respondents have at least one SVOD service that's ad-supported now. That's up 8 percentage points since 2024. And that actually skews a little bit older as well. So those were a few of the data points. I have a couple of other data points that I can pull as well, that I can note as well. But let's flip back to you for some reactions on those, and also I know you have additional, as you just said, you have additional data from the Deloitte report as well.
I do. And so I noticed particularly that point about the $5 increase, Will. And I really think that the SVOD services now are beginning to run up against some hard barriers in their pricing. There were several other data points that they highlighted in that about people thinking that they were getting about as much value out of their services as that they can probably give, and in fact they were actually feeling that they were paying too much. So just to give you a couple of the points, 53% said that SVODs are the paid media and entertainment services they use most often, but 41% also said that the SVODs they have aren't worth the price, and 47% say they pay too much for streaming services. What this all says to me, Will, and this $5 on their favorite service just really emphasizes is, I think the days of Disney being able to double the price in 18 months of Disney Plus are over. They are pretty much hitting the limit of how much people want to spend for these services. And I think that is really going to cool the increases that people are going to accept. They are really going to, if they do add $5, they're going to cause a flood of people to either leave the service or drop to a lower tier plan, which of course, they're trying to get people on the ad plans anyway. But if they're already on the ad plans, I noticed that Disney just increased the price of their ad plan. If they're on the ad plan, the only way, if they bump up the price, is out. So, this will be greeted, I think, by floods of people cutting off the service if they put up $5 or more. And this is significant, right? Netflix has the most expensive SVOD tier, which is their upper tier, which is $25. And so, everybody else is lower than that. But I really do think that they're reaching their limit.
I think that's probably a fair point.
Yep. So one of the things I want to come to is what's been widely reported. One data point that has been widely reported is that the report makes the point that people have pretty much had four paid services, 4 SVODs on average over the last year. So between 2023 and 2024. Or at least between 23, 24, 25, they've had about 4. But in the last year, that price has gone up significantly. We are now paying, apparently, for all of those services, $69. And that is, as they say, a 13% increase over what it was last year, which was $61, which just goes, to reinforce the fact that we think that they have been raising prices way too fast. So while I agree that this is pretty steep price increase, I think there's there's a lot of flexibility now built into SVOD, which wasn't built in before. And that's primarily because of these ad tiers. And it really gives people, if they're really feeling pressure, that they have an opportunity now to lower their price, lower their entry-level price, and pay less. And I've actually calculated, I looked at the top 7 SVODs, Will. And if you subscribe to the ad tier of the top 7 SVODs, and obviously I'm excluding Apple TV here because Apple TV doesn't have an ad tier, you would be spending $51 a month. If you subscribe to the ad-free tier, you would be spending $94 a month. And to have traditional pay TV, well, a Dish network, the average revenue per unit is about $109. So if you're coming off of traditional pay TV, there's still a ton of money you can save, particularly if you're willing to watch ads. And you can sign up for the top 7 SVOD services and still keep $50 in your pocket. I guess my point here is that there's still lots of flexibility for people to adjust their bundle to save money if they want to.
Absolutely. You're saying it's 51 for ad supported, 94 for ad free. So that's a $43 difference. That's means it's 80% more, give or take, to get the ad free experience across the top 7 SVOD services, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Netflix, of course, has the biggest difference between ad free and ad load viewing. I think it's $10 now. That said, Will, it still seems to me that there's plenty of savings to be had. I think as people continue to cut the cord, that they're going to find that they're going to end up saving money by going to SVODs. And it makes me wonder why exactly people are feeling the pinch at $69 when they've been paying, if they've come from traditional pay TV, they've been paying far, far more than that and getting less. And I suspect that there's still a lot of ad-free viewing going on. So that $69 number includes at least 2 of the services being watched ad-free. So they have a better entertainment product because they're watching uninterrupted. They're watching that content uninterrupted. So, but, I come back to the fact that, they're spending $69. Some of that is going to be ad-free. They have flexibility. If they're willing to watch ads, they can reduce that and pay less. But I will say the funny thing is, in this same survey, Will, I think it was in this survey. No, it was in a different survey. I noted that 80% of this other survey group said that if they're paying for a service, they shouldn't see ads. It should be ad-free. But in that same survey, 63% said, if you give me savings that amounts to a cup of coffee a month, I'll watch ads. So, I don't know. That sounds people can be bought pretty cheaply, right? For a cup of coffee. I know they can't buy me that cheaply. I'll watch without ads if I can possibly do it.
Right. And one reaction, Colin, to what you said about why people, the $69 strikes people the way it does is that, as we know, prices have increased a lot over the last 5 years. I don't know off the top of my head what that number, what the combined number would be, the 69, what it would compare to 5 years ago. But I don't know. It probably wouldn't surprise me if it was like half.
Well, I can tell you the number. I can tell you the numbers for in 2022.
Yeah.
Ad to watch with ads was $10 cheaper, $40. And to watch without ads was $27 cheaper. It was $69.
Yeah, and that's 3 years ago, not 5 years ago.
That's 3 years ago. So look, people are absolutely right.
Yeah.
The SVOD providers have been really putting the pedal to the metal on the price increases. Disney and Netflix, I think, are probably the 2 worst offenders here. But what this data really tells us is they're running out of runway to do that. And I think the days of Disney doubling the price in 18 months are over. They're not going to be able to do that. As I said earlier, they're going to see floods of people canceling.
I think that's probably right, Colin. And we're actually starting to run out of time here. The Deloitte report is definitely worth downloading. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So I'm going to hold off on sharing any of the other few data points that I had noted, but really do encourage listeners to download the report and have a look at it.
Yep. And as I say, make sure you join us next week because Jonathan Carson from Antenna will be here reviewing some of their data. And just before we go, thanks again to Looper Insights. Visit looperinsights.com to download the Sports Streaming Craze Report, a must-read on the future of sports in streaming.
Great. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, everyone, for listening in, and we'll see you next week.
Inside the Stream is a production of In-Screen Media and Video News, all rights reserved.